Understanding sun and its movement is an important aspect in designing buildings, and the study of these aspects is called as solar architecture. Now, solar architecture is not only important for practicing architects, but it is also very important for you NATA and JEE2 aspirants, because there have been a lot of questions in the past exams from the area of solar architecture, and in this video we will be looking into the details of solar architecture from NATA and JEE point of view. We will understand all the important concepts, and also most importantly we will practice some past JEE and NATA questions related to this concept towards the end of this video. This is R. Chandra from KP Classes, and let us begin the discussion by looking into a brief introduction as to what exactly solar architecture is about. If you have been following the news, or if you have been going through the social media, you might know about the occurrence of the Surya Tilak recently during the Ram Navami celebrations at Ayodhya. That's where the concentration of solar radiation, the sun's rays, using lens, was concentrated onto the main idol in the Garbhagriha of the temple at Ayodhya. Now, it is not only in these modern day temples or today's or recent temples which are constructed like the Ayodhya Ram temple. This phenomena of using solar radiation or concentrating the sun's rays into some particular parts of temples has been an age-old practice in our country. Be it the Kiranotsav at the Mahalakshmi temple at Kolhapur, where during 2 times of the year, that is in the beginning of February, and so 2 times across the year, there is celebration of Kiranotsav where the solar radiation directly falls onto the main idol in the Sanctum Sanctorum. By the way, in architecture, Sanctum Sanctorum, in temple architecture, it is the Garbhagriha, the main room where the god is installed or the god is consecrated. So the temple, the solar radiation, the sun rays do not generally enter into the main Garbhagriha, but on the period of that Kiranotsav, that's when you see this phenomena occurring in the Mahalakshmi temple at Kolhapur. Similarly, you have Konark Sun temple where such solar phenomena are experienced at some important dates of the year. Similarly, there is Koba Jain Tirth at Ahmedabad where again you can see the solar radiation concentrating onto the main idol. Similarly, Sun temple at Modhera, which is a 1,000-year-old temple in Gujarat. Now, remember, for people preparing for JEE paper 2 and NATA, it's not only understanding solar architecture. Through this video, I would also like to tell you that you should know some important structures in India and throughout the world as well, their geographic location, some important features of them. Like in past NATA question, there have been questions like they can give you this image and ask you to identify which temple is it. This is the remains of the temple at Konark, the Konark Sun temple in Odisha, which comes under the Kalinga architecture. If you have prepared for the NATA examination through a 51-day course, you already know these architectural styles. We have a separate dedicated lecture for temple architecture as well, and how to identify the buildings by looking into the features of it. So Sun temple at Modhera, the one unique feature of it, if you so let me not digress away a lot, but give you some important detail over here. Across the calendar year of 365 days, there are 2 dates on which the length of the day and the length of the night are equal. That is referred to in solar architecture, or in understanding of sun path, we call it as equinox. There are 2 equinox dates which occur in the month of March and also in the month of September. Generally, it is March 21st and September 23rd. The dates can sometimes change from year to year, but it is mostly along those dates of March 21st and September. On these 2 dates, the March equinox and the September equinox, on these 2 dates, the sun rays directly fall into the Garbhagriha of the Sun temple. Now, it itself is dedicated to the sun god, so it becomes very important to design the building with respect to solar architecture. Similarly, even in the Ayodhya Ram temple, it is considered that Lord Sri Ram is of the clan of sun god. So that's how the relevance of solar architecture comes into picture. So not only in India, now these are just few examples of temples where solar architecture has been implemented. Understanding or orienting the buildings in such a way to capture the solar radiation on some particular dates has been followed, like I told you, even in temples which are more than 1,000 years old from today's time. But not only in India, practice of understanding sun path, practice of understanding solar architecture or movement of sun with respect to earth, that has been seen throughout the world. Even if you look into the ancient Egyptian temple of Ramses II at Abu Simbel, that's also where you see the solar radiation falling onto the main idols placed inside the temple on some particular dates which are important probably to the person to whom the temple is dedicated. Similarly, even in Stonehenge, again Stonehenge is a structure which belongs to Stone Age. It is a prehistoric structure, so it is more than 5,000 6,000 years old. So it falls into the Neolithic age era. So it is a very old structure, more than 5,000 years old, and even solar architecture or traces of it have been observed in Stonehenge, which is located in England. This is a past NATA question, by the way. They have given a similar picture and asked to identify this monument. Where is it located? You can get such questions. This is Stonehenge, located in England. Now, if you know about Stonehenge, there are two important dates, which is summer solstice and winter solstice. Summer, just to, you can make a note of these points. You can get direct questions related to solar architecture of this nature as well. Summer solstice is basically the date on which you have the longest calendar year, so longest daytime in a given calendar year. Summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, like in countries like India, it occurs on June 21st, which is also celebrated as International Yoga Day because of the significance of this particular date. Summer solstice, and also you have winter solstice, which for the northern hemisphere countries is the shortest day in the given calendar, which generally occurs in the month of December, around December 21st or 22nd sometimes. So I told you about equinox. Equinox, if you remember, it occurs in March and September. Just a second. Equinox occurs in the month of March, approximately March 21st and September 23rd. These are the dates of equinox in the northern hemisphere. That's when the solar phenomena of Modera Sun Temple is observed. Similarly, at Stonehenge, so these 4 dates are important phenomena in solar architecture, which you can remember. 2 dates with equal 12-hour day and 12-hour night time. So you have 24 hours in a day. 12 hours daytime, 12 hours nighttime. This doesn't occur every day. It occurs only during the equinox. The 2 dates I told you, that is March 21st and September 23rd. And coming to the longest date, it occurs on June 21st in the northern hemisphere. Northern hemisphere is basically the top half above the equator. India falls in the northern hemisphere. Summer solstice and winter solstice occurs on December 21st. Sorry. Now these 2 dates are important for Stonehenge because on the date of the summer solstice, the sunrise exactly aligns with the monument of Stonehenge, and that's observed. And similarly, on the winter solstice, the sunset exactly aligns with the monument of Stonehenge. So these are, so similarly, this is referred to, this picture over here, it's a modern structure, which is referred to generally as Manhattan Henge. It is in New York, in Manhattan. Now this is where the east-west link road, the main central road, along that also the alignment of sun is observed. Now, so that's a brief idea on how historically, not only in modern examples, but historically, how solar architecture has been important in designing buildings or spaces even in India and across the world. So I thought it will just give you a sense of an idea as to how it is implemented generally, and you should also remember to identify important temples, know their features and their location. You will directly get picture based questions also in the examination sometimes. Now coming to the detail, let us try to understand the technical part of it about the solar architecture. I gave you the examples, let us understand, so the next few minutes where we are going to discuss all the important points of solar architecture. This will be a short way you can answer all the questions of solar architecture without any difficulty. So have concentration, make a note of the points we are discussing over here into your notes, and I'm sure this will help you just like our 51-day course. If you have not yet enrolled into the 51-day course of KP classes, you can contact us on the contact number which is displayed on the screen and also given in the description of this video. So you can you can be assured of clearing this examination with wonderful results, like our students. So already this by the time you're watching this video, we are in the month of April, and some of us by the end of April, right? There are some students of our 51-day course who are even scoring 140 plus, which is a wonderful score for NATA examination. So if you are still planning to give an attempt of NATA examination the month of June, July, or if you are still preparing, this would be the wonderful source for your preparation. You can be assured of the quality of it. Coming back to this particular session, this particular video's content, we are focusing on the solar architecture like I told you. So let us try to understand the basics. Make a note of these points. Firstly, I will discuss the points with respect to the northern hemisphere. What is northern hemisphere? The top half of the earth above the equator, and India falls in the northern hemisphere, because based on the hemisphere the directions of the sun path will all change. So you should be informed of it. So first let me talk, but it is not difficult. See, for the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, all the directions will just be opposite. So first let us understand the points for northern hemisphere. There's nothing to by heart over here. Everything is conceptual. Listen carefully and understand. So if you look into this diagram, there's a building over here and some dotted lines which are shown, and the north, south, east, west. So see, the building is facing towards the south. This is the door of the building facing towards south. North is on the back side. Then you have east and west. I hope you know how the directions are identified. Always to the right hand side of north you will have east. So if this is north, you will have south over here. East will always be on the right hand side of north. You have to remember that. You can see over here, this is north. On the right hand side of north, you have east. That's the first important aspect you should remember in identifying the directions. Now coming to the points of northern hemisphere with respect to solar architecture, you can see these dotted lines. In the summer, so what is the main difference between the movement of sun in summer and winter? So sun doesn't follow the same path every day. So the dotted lines which you see over here, these are called a sun path. So in the northern hemisphere, first and foremost, sun does not exactly rise at the east. If you have been learning that sun rises in the east, that is not a 100% accurate statement. Why? Sun does not rise exactly at east. Sun rises from the east portion. It can rise slightly above east, slightly below east. East is basically a particular direction which is at 90 degrees with the north pointed by the compass. But sun does not exactly rise at east. It rises from the east portion. That's the first thing which you should know. Now coming to so sun does not exactly rise at east in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, both, sun does not exactly rise in the east. Now the main difference between northern and southern hemisphere is the tilt. The sun path always tilts towards the south in the northern hemisphere. You see, there is a bending of sun path. Sun is rising over here. It is bending towards the south and coming to the sunset point. Again here, this is the sunrise point. It is not exactly perpendicularly above the center of this building. It is slightly tilting, you can see. So always remember that the sun path in the northern hemisphere will tilt towards the south. That's the first point. In the northern hemisphere, first point, sun path tilts towards the south direction. As you can see in the diagram, the sun path will always tilt towards the south direction. That's point number one. Point number two, the difference between the summer sun and the winter sun, the tilt will be very high in the month of winter, and the sunrise point also, like I told you, this is the exact east direction. Now this direction is basically northeast, not exact northeast, but towards the northeast part it comes, right? And this point over here, where is the winter sun rising? It is rising towards the southeast. So remember, the summer sunrise, this also is a past JEE question. They ask you where does the sun rise in the summer or winter in the northern hemisphere. So in the northern hemisphere, remember, in the summer, sunrise is in the northeast. It is not exactly at east, it is northeast sunrise. Similarly, the sunset also will be at northwest. So sunrise is northeast. In the summer month, sunset is in the northwest, not exact west. Sun does not exactly set at a west point. It sets at the northwest point, towards the north. So that's with respect to the summer in the northern hemisphere. Now coming to the winter point, as you can see from the, just a second, as you can see from the diagram, southeast is the sunrise point and southwest is the sunset point in the month of winter. So if you talk about the winter sunrise, in all the months of winter, the sunrise in the northern hemisphere, all these are with respect to northern hemisphere, the sunrise will be towards the south of east. So it is southeast sunrise. And finally, in winter, the sunset point will be towards southwest. So you see, it is not exact east and west, it is towards the north or towards the south. In the summer, it will be towards the north of east and west, the sunrise. So it is a general statement to understand that sunrise is in the east, sunsets in the west. But exactly, it is northeast and northwest for sunrise, southeast and southwest for sunset. So in the winter months with respect to northern hemisphere. Now one last point. I told you that in the northern hemisphere, the tilt of the sun path is towards which direction? Towards the south direction. Now if the sun is tilting towards the south direction, the direct sun rays with higher intensity that will be received from the south side, right? So for example, I am facing towards south. Let us say the sun is moving from front of me, it is tilting towards the south direction. So the sun rays will directly come onto my face, right? So the direct solar radiation, because it is coming from the south direction in the northern hemisphere, it will create more shadow. So if you provide large windows on the south facing wall, you will get dark deep shadows in the building, which is generally not advisable in architecture. Where do you get the diffused reflected solar radiation? It will come from the north direction. So remember, in the northern hemisphere, where do you get shadowless light? This also is a past NATA and JEE question. They ask you from which side will you get shadowless light, shadowless solar radiation, shadowless sun rays. Shadowless as in, it doesn't mean you will not get shadow at all, but the intensity of the shadow will be less. Why? Mainly because of the reflected solar radiation. Now which direct shadowless solar radiation comes from which direction in the northern hemisphere? They will come from the north direction. Why north? Because the sun is bending towards the south, and from the south side you will get direct radiation. Direct radiation will give you deep shadows, darker shadows, which are not required or which are not advisable in designing buildings. So shadowless or less intense shadows, less identifiable shadows are seen from the north direction in the northern hemisphere. Now all these points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points, all these will just be the reverse for the southern hemisphere. So if I just write down the points for the southern hemisphere in some other color, so let me just write over here for the southern hemisphere, I am marking the points with a blue color. Let us say the sun tilt towards the north over here. For the southern hemisphere, the sunrise will happen from the southeast direction. Always sunrise will be from east, but instead of northeast it will become southeast. Sunset will be on the southwest direction. Winter sunrise, that's with respect to summer in the southern hemisphere. Now winter in the southern hemisphere, it will be from the northeast. And the sunset in the winter hemisphere, in the southern hemisphere, the winter sunset will be in the northwest direction. Always it is east and west, but the north and south will basically interchange for the northern and southern hemisphere. And finally, in the southern hemisphere, where do you get the sun shadowless solar radiation from? It will be from the south direction. So you can just make a note of these 6 plus 6, 12 points, and you can directly expect at least one question in your NATA and JEE examination from this part. So I don't think anything is difficult. Understand a concept over here that the sun bends, so everything depends on the tilt. The sun tilts towards the south in the northern hemisphere, the sun tilts towards the north in the southern hemisphere, opposite it is. So let us practice some questions now, and then we'll end this particular discussion. Just on these 6 plus 6 points for the southern hemisphere, you have a lot of past NATA and JEE questions. Let us practice some questions over here, starting with the first one. In the northern hemisphere, the winter sun rises from which direction among the following? Now winter sunrise in the northern hemisphere they are asking. In the northern hemisphere, so you can check winter sunrise they are talking about. So in the northern hemisphere, the red points which I have written, that's the northern hemisphere. Winter sunrise is from southeast direction, direct straightforward, which is also shown in this picture. The winter sunrise is from the southeast direction. It is always east, but it will be towards the south in the winter. So it will be southeast direction. Southeast direction is the correct answer for the northern hemisphere winter sunrise. Next point. Chhajjas above windows are meant to protect the building from which of the following? Obviously, chhajjas are projections. So, what is the use of solar architecture in designing buildings? It is to understand how the angle of the sun is, how much should be the length of the projection. That's what solar architecture is about. And these projections are called as chhajjas, which are used to shade the buildings or shade the windows and protect it from the extra sun rays, extra sun's heat. Next question, why does large building, now this is a past JEE question again, why does a large building have high located glazing on the north side? Why do you have high located glazing on the north side? The options, let us see, to get bright, so they're talking about large buildings having glazing on the north side, to get bright sunlight throughout the day. Do you get from the north direction, do you get direct bright solar radiation or do you get reflected radiation? So you can remember I told you shadowless rays are from the north direction. You have the reflected diffused solar radiation from this direction. So obviously the first option cannot be correct. You will not get direct sunlight. To stop the worker from looking outside, obviously that's not even a logical answer here. To get uniform shadowless light throughout the day, that is the appropriate answer. From the north direction, they have not mentioned about the hemisphere over here, but they're talking about India. So India is in the northern hemisphere. So in the northern hemisphere, from the north side, you will get the uniform shadowless light throughout the day. C again is the correct answer if you check the fourth option, because sun stays on the north side throughout the day. Not correct. Sun doesn't stay on the north side throughout the day. It in fact stays on the south side throughout the day in the northern hemisphere. The next question you can see over here, this again is a past JEE question. In the southern hemisphere, shadowless light is from which direction? I told you in the northern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere, shadowless light is from north direction. In the southern hemisphere, it is from the south direction. Direct, straightforward question. In the southern hemisphere, shadowless light is from the south direction. You need not by heart it. What is the reason? The reason is you get diffused solar radiation, reflected sun rays from the south direction. That's the answer. Last two questions over here. This is a past NATA question. A very interesting one. You can see. One morning after sunrise, Suresh was standing facing a pole. So Suresh is standing facing a pole. And they're talking about the sunrise. That is early in the morning. Sun will be on the east side. So sun is on the east side. Shadow of the pole falls directly to fell exactly to his right. So on the right side, what do you have? West. Because if the sun is on the east, for the pole, if say this is the pole, sun is on the east side, the shadow will fall on the west direction, and they're telling that west is on the right hand direction of Suresh. This is on the right hand side of Suresh. So what is the right hand side for Suresh? It is west. To which direction is he facing? So basically, if on the right hand side you are having west, what is the direction towards which he is facing? Opposite to west you will have east, and I told you east will always be on the right hand side of north. So this is north. So what is the direction he is facing? This is on the right hand side. What is the facing direction? Facing direction will be south. Right, so he is facing towards the south. That's the correct answer. Right hand side of north you will have east, right hand side of south you will have west. So the answer for this will be south. The last question over here, which time of the day is represented by locating, so what time of the day is represented by the location of the sun in the diagram? So sun is here, they're asking what is the time. You know that sun rises on the east direction, it bends towards the south and sets in the west. So they're talking about northern hemisphere. So after sunrise, this is basically afternoon. This is the first half of the day. The dotted line is the next half of the day. So we are talking about a time which is not PM for sure, it is AM, that is morning time. That too, is it? So PM options you can directly cancel. Why? Because the sun is on the first half of the day. The dark line is first half of the day. Then you have the dotted line, the next half of the day, which is setting toward, this is the sunrise portion, that's the sunset portion. So it is on the sunrise portion, AM part. So PM options you can cancel out. 6 AM is generally the sunrise itself. So sunrise, sun will be over here. So the appropriate option, we are talking about some time after sunrise. So this basically is going to be 9 AM. The option B will be the correct answer, which is few hours after sunrise in this diagram. So that's how you can answer these questions. So understanding about the sun path, sun's movement, and the details of solar architecture, directions which we discussed, this is going to be an important area for your NATA and JEE examination. So I think the concept is clear to you. Made a note of these points. For an in-depth study for your upcoming NATA examination, you can enroll into a 51-day course, or you can enroll into the classes program of KPGate classes. You can contact us on the number which is displayed on the screen, or you can look into the details of the disc. You will find the link, direct link for the 51-day course in the description of this video, which has been proven to be one of the most successful course for your NATA preparation with wonderful results every year. Thank you for watching this video. Do subscribe for further updates, and also check out our courses on the KP Exam Prep app for your preparation of NATA and also JEE Paper 2.